Somebody's got to explain something to me. I mean, what's wrong with cutting down trees? We are not running out of wood. The forests have grown like mad in recent decades. Why is it wrong to cut down trees?
This is the recording of Donald Kagan on October the 19th, 2012. And the interviewer is Katherine Epstein, Yale graduate and an OSU PhD. And we're interviewing Don as part of the celebration of the honorary degree conferred on him by Ohio State University in 2012.
Okay.
Okay, so you asked the questions, Kate, and I'm going to move on to Don and that wonderful picture of Greece behind him.
Okay. It's lovely to see you, officially, for the record. So we're gonna try to cover various chunks of your life and times, and starting with childhood. You were born. And I wanted to start by asking, I recall you saying, actually, I think during a lunch at Thai restaurant after the seminar concluded,
Wow.
that you're from Lithuania, or your family hails from Lithuania.
Right.
So I was curious, was that important to you growing up?
No.
No. Okay.
I was brought to the United States before my second birthday, so I have absolutely zero recollection of life in Lithuania.
Okay.
And all I know about it is what I was told by my family, but it really was not a significant part of our life.
Was English spoken at home?
When I was a little baby and for a little while afterwards, we stayed a while with my mother's parents, and they spoke only Yiddish. My mother came knowing no English whatsoever. She spoke some Russian, some Lithuanian, and some Yiddish, but she learned how to speak English. So the language at home was English,
Okay.
interspersed occasionally with Yiddish.
Okay. Okay. So English was your first language with
Definitely.
any vowels?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I think Geoffrey just asked this, but I'll ask again. Are you an only child?
No, I had an older sister. She was 5 or 6 years older than I.
And did having an older sibling have any impact on
Yes, she was
schooling?
No.
Or more generally?
No, she was a beautiful person, very kind, very gentle, and she took good care of me. My mother worked. She was a widow, of course. I don't know why I said of course, we didn't mention that yet. But my father died in Europe, which was the occasion for my mother joining her family in America. And so she was a widow with 2 children, one of them an infant, and working a full, hard day in a factory. So my sister was a very important part of my life.
Okay. And what kind of factory did your mom work in?
A smoking pipe factory.
No kidding.
Yes, they made briar pipes.
Briar's the brand name?
That's the wood.
Oh, wood. Okay, the type
Yeah.
of wood. Okay. Okay. And so your sister did not sort of boss you around.
Oh no, she was the sweetest, kindest, most generous person.
Okay. Okay. Did your interest in history start as a kid?
Yeah, I can't tell you just when, but I read everything I could lay my hands on, from comic books to whatever.
Okay.
And I found myself sometimes reading history books.
Okay.
And I found more and more that they appealed to me more than other books.
Okay.
So that even as just a kid growing up, I read relatively a lot of history.
Did that have something to do, both comic books and history books are in some way about entering into another world? Was there an element
I never
of
had that
escapism?
sense. No.
Okay.
I never had that sense that when I was reading history, I was getting into another world. When I was reading history, it was first of all a story that was interesting about real people.
Okay.
And the other thing was that it even then, unless I'm deceiving myself, it was a case in which I thought, oh yes, that reminds me of something in the world in which I lived.
So drawing analogies as a kid.
Right. It ran, in other words, the other way. I didn't escape into history. History came into my life.
Okay. And was there a particular area that was of interest to you?
I think in the beginning I probably read mostly American history.
Okay.
And I can't tell you when the transition took place, but somewhere in there it shifted to European history, and especially modern European history. I don't mean necessarily contemporary, but modern European history. And that increased, so more and more I was interested in modern European history. I think part of it must have been what was happening in the world and my awareness of what was happening, because we were aware, as probably more than most Americans were because of our European background. And so the phenomenon of Hitler dominated our thinking when I was a kid growing up. And so wanting to know about the world that produced that and that was was something that was easy and natural.
Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And so, and it wasn't yet then ancient history that really
I never heard of ancient history, essentially, except in passing, until I went to college.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. Well, I'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
Did you have a particular teacher as a kid?
Not until we reached high school.
Okay.
But in high school, probably in my junior and senior year, there was a man called, his name was Silverman, and he taught modern European history. And he was a really good teacher. And there are so many things about him that I admired that I think it's pretty clear that after studying with Mr. Silverman, that's what decided me I wanted to be a history teacher.
Okay. And were you at that point open as to what sort of age of student you teach, or?
Oh, I thought I would try to be like Mr. Silverman.
Okay, so not yet college.
I'd be a high school history teacher.
Right.
Below that, history seemed to me to be taught in such a way that trivial and uninteresting that I wouldn't want to teach at a lower grade.
Okay.
But by the time you got to the last couple of years in high school, and I knew nothing about college. Nobody I ever heard of went to college, so that seemed to me to be the pinnacle.
Okay. Well, so why did you decide to go to college?
Oh, well, you did. I mean,
Okay.
If you were in my circles, a poor working class kid who had good academic ability, you went to college.
Okay. Do you have memories of Brooklyn College?
Very much, yes.
Any in particular?
Plenty. You'll have to stop me.
Okay.
But now, one part of it was sort of interesting. We lived in I guess it's too strong to use the word slum.
Okay.
But it was a poor working class neighborhood. It was a little bit nicer than some such neighborhoods, but that's what it was. But it's very, very city, tenements, that sort of thing. Okay. That was the world I saw as I went around.
Whereabouts in Brooklyn?
It was the Brownsville section of Brooklyn. So the first time I applied and was admitted to Brooklyn College. And the first time I ever saw Brooklyn College, you had to take about an hour's worth of subway to get there from where I was. And then the subway let you off in a sort of busy, city-ish part of Brooklyn. And you had to walk maybe a couple of blocks to get to Brooklyn College.
Okay.
And it was a proper college campus. It had all the accoutrements. It had grass. It had nice iron fences, around it. It had buildings in the Georgian style. There was even a lily pond as you came in. And I really thought, later in life I learned that paradise is the Persian word for a garden.
Huh.
And it was, in that sense, it was paradise for me.
Right.
I really was, it's interesting how the physical appearance of the place somehow had a spiritual effect. Huh. When I went there, I was going to a different world. Huh. It was very attractive to me.
And so I presume there was not a lot of park area around the tenement?
Not like that. I
Okay,
mean, we
yeah.
had parks where you did certain things. You know, you played sports, you did that and the other thing.
Right.
But the idea, a park in a British sense almost,
Right.
is what this was like. So it had an interesting effect. I mean, it was elevating. You're moving into a higher world now.
Right.
That was, and I was all, I would, you know, it was funny. It's not like, it doesn't seem to me like the kids I see at Yale who, when they are juniors and seniors at the latest, they are already planning what college to go to. They're going to visit 7 or 8 or 9 of them. They're going to get all kinds of literature. It's going to be, going to Brooklyn College after graduating from high school was like going to high school after graduating from junior high school. You know, you were still in Brooklyn. You were still going to get on transportation to get there. But when I saw it, that was a transcendent experience.
Huh. And was it a lot of, what was the student body like? Was it a lot of kids like you?
Yes.
Was it, okay.
Yes, it was in many ways very, what's the word I'm looking for? It was not different, there wasn't a lot of different people.
Okay.
I mean, most everybody came from Brooklyn.
Okay.
Most of us were from families that had never gone to college. Most of us were in the working class or sort of little shopkeepers or middle class at most. That was the range. We reflected to some considerable degree the ethnic character of Brooklyn in that day, except that there were very, very few blacks. The whole world was such that there was no programs for blacks to go to college. There were no preparatory things. They were practically not there. If you leave that
In the college.
in college,
Okay.
yeah. If you leave that element out, a high percentage, I don't know what the percentage was Jewish, partly because there were a lot of Jews in Brooklyn, but also because the Jews emphasized the need for education more than other ethnic groups. So if a Jewish kid was capable of going to college, chances are he would go to college.
Right.
But of course there were plenty of Christians, and that was not an issue.
Right.
This was not an issue.
Okay. Did your sister get to go to college?
She did not.
She did not. Okay.
No.
Okay. And so 4 years at Brooklyn
Right.
College, and then you went on to do an MA at Brown.
Right.
Correct. So what was it? I mean, so you're moving away from home for the first time,
Yes,
presumably,
absolutely.
to a very different type of city.
Absolutely.
What was the transition like?
Fine.
Okay. Okay. That's good. I'm
Well, I mean,
glad it wasn't traumatic.
no, what happened was, for the peculiarities of the New York school system, I finished my college work in January. And one of the reasons I went to Brown, I was able to go to Brown, or they were, whatever, was that I could enter in the spring term. And so I arrived in Providence in January.
Which year, Don?
50.
Okay.
Is that right? Wait a minute, don't believe me. I think I'm wrong. No, I would have been 20, I'm 54.
54.
Right, 54. Yes. And so I went directly up there and got a room in a boarding house and went to work.
Okay. And was that, now had you cast your net more widely in applying to master's programs, or was Brown, Brown or bust?
The intention was to get a PhD program.
Okay.
But it was made very, very difficult by the fact that I wanted not to waste time to go directly into a program. Most places don't admit you in mid-year.
Okay.
So I was not able
Okay.
to consider most places.
Right.
But when I did find out that Brown would consider it, Brown was, I don't think I had any other options. I think if I hadn't been able to get to Brown, I wouldn't have gotten into anything, at least at that time.
Right. And were you able to finish at Brown in a June period, or did you end up finishing?
What actually happened was I satisfied the requirements for an MA at Brown within a year of my admission.
Okay.
But by then, I had learned that there was no PhD in my subject at Brown, so I would have to go elsewhere to get a PhD. And I had already applied to different places and been admitted to a couple of places. So I couldn't continue my education without a gap if I would just go from Brown in the mid-year and
Right.
have to wait until the next fall.
Right.
So the Brown people were just very nice. They were
Okay.
very helpful. They said, why don't you stay on and take some more courses,
Nice.
and we'll continue your fellowship. And that's what I did. So I got an extra semester of instruction,
Very nice.
and I didn't have to go off to Ohio
Right.
until the next year.
Don, you already spoke of my subject. There was
Yeah,
another
that's-
pro in my subject. Where did that one come in? When did that?
When did I? Yeah, right. I find that a slightly interesting story. I thought I was going to be a history teacher, like Mr. Silverman.
Mhm.
And it was in the second year, probably even the second semester of the second year. And here's how it happened. Yes, I was going to prepare to get a teaching license in New York, and they had very rigorous requirements for that purpose. I don't mean quality requirements, I mean learning. They were very strange in those days. They thought if you wanted to be a history teacher, you should know a lot of history. So they required that you take courses in all of these historical fields. And so they gave you this whole list of things, and you could pick one out and do it. And so being simple-minded and not knowing much about it, I thought, well, why not start at the beginning? So I thought, how about ancient history? So I asked my friends who were veterans and knew what was going on, could give me wisdom about things. I'd say, what do you think? I mean, I think that's what I'm going to do. How about that? He said, look, ancient history's fine, but wait until you're a senior, because she may have retired by then. She was Professor Meta Elizabeth Schutz, and she was ancient history at Brooklyn College.
Okay.
She was a maiden lady, probably in her 60s, from Maine, although somehow she had gone to school in Long Island or something like that, Columbia, that kind of thing. Anyway, what did I know? I took the course, and she was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. So there would be, let's say, 30 or 20 of us sitting there in the room. We operated by recitation. She would say what she wanted to say, but she would call on you and put a question to you, which you then would have to respond to. And kids would respond one way or another, and it seemed like no matter what they said, she would come down on them like a ton of bricks. Of course, if they got things wrong, she would tell them that. But if they got things right, and they mispronounced a word, or that their grammar wasn't what it should be, she would clobber them. And this went on, and for some reason, for 2 weeks, she didn't get to me. And I was getting angrier and angrier and angrier at this incredible brutality that she engaged in. But I wasn't about to get nailed, so I was preparing like, go ahead, show me. And so finally she got to me, and she asked me the question, and I was ready for war, boy. So I spat out the answer in the fewest conceivable number of words. And she said, yes, that's right. And she moved on to the next. And slowly I began...
She got your number already.
Slowly I began to see, I said, what is going on here? And I realized that what she was saying to us in the broadest sense, everything she was telling us was, all you Jews and Italians and Swedes out there who are in uneducated territory, all your life you've been told how wonderful you are, or else you wouldn't be here. It's very hard to get into the city colleges in those days. Much harder from an academic point of view than getting to Harvard or Yale. So these were intellectually, allegedly, the elite, But they were all like me, ignorant and crude. And she was telling us, that's not good enough. I'm not interested in what your IQ is. I want to know, what do you know? How do you express yourself? How do you comport yourself? How do you, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And nothing but the best is good enough. And I mean, she blew me away. I wonder if she had been teaching Zulu history, whether I would have wanted to be a Zulu historian, because I was really so taken. It was a challenge and an incredible compliment. But most of all, it was a challenge.
Right.
I had been led to believe I was a wonderful chap up to that. I knew better, but people had that idea. And she made me understand you're nowhere. I mean, you got to shape up. I mean, that's it. So anyway, for one reason, I admit, I also was captivated by what I learned about the Greeks and the Romans.
Okay.
I mean, they really got to me. I'll never know how much of it was the teacher and how much of it was the subject.
Did she had a PhD herself?
Oh, sure.
Okay. I figured that.
Yeah.
That's probably,
And she had a Columbia PhD, and in those days, Columbia was really a good place.
Right. The caveat there. Okay. And so you took just the one class?
No, I took every class
she took.
taught.
Okay.
I had 3 classes with her before I was through.
Gotcha.
But now I'm in my sophomore year. This is my first semester with her, and I realized, I realized I'm on the wrong track. I want to be a college professor, and I want to be an ancient historian.
So it was really a transformative experience.
It's a transformative experience, and it proved what an imbecile I was, because I knew nothing. If you want to be an ancient historian, you're going to have to pass examinations in Latin, Greek, French, and German, minimally. I knew some French. That was it. Never close to the others at all. So it was really quite a crazy thing to have happen. But I thought, okay, that's what I got to do. And so what I needed right away was to start learning one of those classical languages, and then start learning both of them as fast as I possibly could. And there's a charming story which, in a way, speaks so well about Brooklyn College in those days. The classics department was small, but they were really very devoted. And so devoted to their subject, and if a student was interested in that subject, there was a lot they would do for him. Well, I learned that there was such a thing as a special tutorial course, that you could learn anything that you wanted to it, if you could find a faculty teacher, basically, to do it for free. And so I went to one of the people in the classics department. She was your classic little old lady from Indiana, who I came to her and I said, can you help me? She said, if you will come, she had an apartment right next to the college. She said, if you will come to my apartment at 8 o'clock in the morning every weekday, I will try to teach you some Latin. And so I did. And for the remainder of that semester, that's what I did. And she managed to teach me first year Latin in those few months that we were doing. So, which meant I could then start the next year, which was going to be my junior year, in second year Latin. And then I could also take beginning Greek. So that when I got through, I would have 3 years of Latin, 2 years of Greek, which was essentially minimally what you had to have to get into a program of graduate work.
Okay. And then did you start doing German and more French when
Not
you were
yet.
at Brown, or?
Not yet.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. At Brown, yes, I used to sit in on a German course.
Okay.
And I used the French in my work, so it was good enough that I could be okay with that.
Okay.
But I'll quit with this in just a moment. But it's so interesting. Through my life, at a certain point, it was a big argument was whether that we needed to discriminate in favor of groups that were being discriminated against, whether they be women or whatever, and so on. And one of the arguments I used to confront all the time was that that it's because women these folks give you a certain different quality from what everybody else is. The big thing is women have to be treated especially favorably because women aren't like men, and you have to deal with that, and somehow or other. I mean, when I realize, I'm sorry, I really am not doing this very well. The argument that was given, people need role models.
Okay.
They must be just like them in the way that's meant. So
Okay.
if you're a woman, you have to have a woman be your
Okay.
role model. That was the killer.
Okay.
I realized 2 women who couldn't have been less like me in any respect whatsoever were the crucial people in changing my life, which made me totally unreceptive to the argument about the need for identical role models.
Huh.
Because it's baloney. We do need models. Human beings who do things right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's and so Professor Schutz and then the professor who taught you the Latin
Packer,
would be
Professor Packer, yes.
Okay.
What was her name?
Packer.
Okay.
And it was called a special.
Tutorial.
A special tutorial. I forget whether that was the title or not, but she just gave up her own time for free.
Right.
It's amazing.
That's really
Yeah.
Is that? Do you think that? Well, I'll hold off on that question until we get to
Continue.
you as a teacher.